Now let's look ahead to the Masters. The PDC's now traditional curtain raiser for the season takes place this weekend, and our question of the week on Twitter is this the most excited you have been to watch the Masters?
It might just be. And, you go back, the first two stagings of it were held in the autumn when there's already a bunch of events on the calendar, probably too many televised events on the calendar. So they moved it to January / February. And I don't know, I did like when the World Cup was in this time slot, but it replaced the World Cup as that event at the beginning of the season. It kind of makes sense there, since it previously top 16, now top 24. It's the reward for ending the year near the top of the rankings and let those top players get that extra TV tournament before we get on to all of the Pro Tour events. But this year, because of everything going on and the fact that from day to day, we don't know if there's going to be a suspension in the calendar in any sport, let alone darts, I think it adds something to it. And we haven't had Q School before. Usually we've had Q School. For those of us who, if you're obsessed enough to listen to this show, then you're probably obsessed enough to follow Q School as well. So we're speaking to the same audience in that regard. We haven't had that for the last week. And Q School is a fun way to distract us for 4 days when there's no darts to actually watch. Well, there's been no darts at all now for 3-4 weeks. And with the expansion to 24 players and that added carrot of a spot in the Premier League for, 9 of these players are there, but for one of the other 15 if they go on a very good run. Just adds that little bit extra to look forward to and to enjoy in this event. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see how some of those players who've never played in it before get to do. Players like Jeffrey Swan and Chris Dobie, as well as new players in the top 16. So yeah, I'm going to say yes, but also part of that is because usually I'm just not that excited for this tournament. And this year, there is a little bit to be excited about.
I'm a yes too, and looking at how the vote's going at the moment on Twitter, it's going to be running for another day or so, but 68% going with yes, 32% going with no, and you guys have tweeted us as well your thoughts on it. Sarah Nichols says no. For the last few years, I've been very excited to be there watching in person, missing my annual trip to MK this year. That is one of the downsides, again, that these events are played behind closed doors and darts fans aren't able to go, but there's a lot of people saying that they are excited for it. And Damien Cust says, I've been criticised and expanded the Masters to 24 players, but I can't deny that the answer to this question is yes for me. Perhaps it's more about Ratajski being in the field, though. Matt Johnson 89 says, for me, the fact the final Premier League spot is on the line adds something, but I find it difficult to get excited for a non-ranking event without a crowd. Another point there, but I guess with the Masters as well, and we did a question of the week a few weeks ago, what's the most prestigious Masters named event in sport? And of course the likes of golf, snooker come up as well. Darts is lower down on the list, especially the PDC's version, because there are a lot of events over the year. We're lucky to see a lot of events on TV, and this one kind of is lower down the list, isn't it, on what ones we look forward to the most, what's riding on it. And I think we're going to come on to talk about it in a moment, but the changes that they've made this year with the Premier League spot, more players being involved, it just adds that bit of excitement. But as you mentioned as well, after the PDC World Championship, usually we roll into the BDO World Championship. Sometimes there's a bit of an overlap as well, so we're straight into the other one already. Then you've got Q School the following week. We've had none of that this year, no BDO Worlds. Q School is in a few weeks' time. So since Gerwyn Price hit that match-winning double, there's not been a lot to watch or to really sink our teeth into. So it's been 3 or 4 weeks, and I think a lot of darts fans are just excited to see darts on TV again. And this event, okay, you've got the first night with the best of 11s, but after that you're going to get a lot of longer format games, best of 19, best of 21 over a weekend, top players in the world. I think you've got to be excited to watch it.
As you mentioned, the change in format, expanding from the 16 players that it's been for the last 8 years up to 24 now, as well as, of course, that last spot in the Premier League on the line. What do you make of those two changes to the format and what to play for?
Yeah, I like both of them. I think maybe in time we could see this go from 24 to 32 players, given the strength in depth that we're seeing in the PDC. You look at the players that have got into this event ranked 17th to 24th that we weren't expecting to see in the field, and we've spoke to a few of them on the show. You're going to hear from one of them in a moment, but Stephen Bunting, Chris Dobie, both weren't expected to be playing in this event because it has been the top 16 ever since it started. But pushing it up to 24, I think you look down the list of players, 17th to 24th, and the players that they're going to go up against on that opening session, it's made it more exciting. There's 8 more games than what we usually used to see, and okay, they're not the longer format that we used to see in recent years with the Masters, but it is a nice little curtain raiser, isn't it, for players to maybe warm up. We don't know how important this session's going to be for the players. There's been a bit of a break between this and the World Championship. For some of the players that went out early in the World Championship, it's been a longer break. So if they're able to get on that stage, get a win, and go into that Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, whenever they're playing, that could be a big difference. Who knows? But I like the changes. I like the fact that we've got that Premier League spot. Now, whether that's done because there wasn't a clear-cut person to put in that 10th spot, or maybe this is something that we see carry on next year and all the years going forward, they keep that spot vacant and say the Masters is your showcase, your last chance to push yourself into that spot and have a deep run. I really like that. And who knows, when we get to that Sunday finals day and you've got a couple of players that aren't in the Premier League, we've got 15 out of the 24 in this lineup that aren't in the Premier League, and you've still got a few involved, then they'll be looking around the practice room going, well, this player's not in it yet. If I get another win, does that put the pressure on them if they're more likely to get in? So it just adds another dimension to it, and I'm looking forward to that side of things, seeing who gets into the Premier League in that 10th spot, because those 15 players, if one of them goes and wins the Masters this weekend and beats a lot of the top boys, you can't really argue with them being included.
Yes, indeed. And I like it for this year. I think there was no point to have the entire field set when you knew there was going to be a couple-month break. But it's not always going to work like that. And you go back, just 12 months ago, you had the Masters, and then just a few days later, the first night of the Premier League, the following Thursday. So there's a lot of logistics behind the Premier League and a normal calendar that wouldn't necessarily work if you have to wait to see what happens at the Masters. That said, I've always been a proponent of mixing it up and mixing up how you decide who gets in there. And I've said before that I would love to see a tournament to decide the final spot. And that's what we got this year. It's not necessarily the tournament that I would have picked for it, and not the way I would have thought it would have come about, but it is a tournament that is in essence a play-in spot for the last spot in the field. And okay, it's not necessarily going to go to whoever goes the furthest of the 15 players not in, especially since, it's possible 2 of them will end up making the semifinals and both losing. Then you have to pick between them. But there's going to be a very strong argument for whoever goes the furthest, even if it's a player who might not be someone who the PDC otherwise would have selected for the spot. And I think that adds a dimension of fairness into it. But that said, you could have done that in other ways as well. And a tournament explicitly to determine the last place in the Premier League could be really good television, whether it's a 4-player round robin or an 8-player knockout tournament held on Sky the Thursday before the Premier League during that gap of time, or starting the night before the Masters even, because the Masters goes Friday, Saturday, Sunday in a given year. That could work. And I'd like to maybe see them try that next year. I like the idea of mixing up the final spot, and putting it here in the Masters works very well for this year, but it might not work other years. As far as the expansion to 24, I think that's good. There's already enough opportunities for the top 16. This gets 8 extra players that match on TV and potentially more, and gives them the chance to, play into the field. If they beat one of the top 16 players, they get to continue on against the top 8 in the world. I think that's an added level of fairness, because the top 16 are going to go to the World Match Play and the World's Grand Prix anyway, assuming they're still in the top 16. So I do like this.